In order to demonstrate scene transition, we are going to, of course, need another scene. If you haven't done any builds yet, go ahead and go to File, Build Settings, and make sure you add your open scenes to your builds. So you should have scenes/rooms or whatever your first scene is. Then go ahead and close out of Build Settings, go to your Scenes folder, and then create a new scene, and we'll just call it, Game. So Game Scene. Open up Game Scene. Under the hierarchy, add a new 3D object. I'm going to add a cube, and I'm going to put this cube right in front of my camera. So I'm just going to zero it out so it's right there in front of my camera. And then I'm going to go to File, Build Settings again, and then add Open Scenes. So the game should be in index 1 and rooms 0. Then I'm going to go ahead and close out of Build Settings, save my scene, and then go back to rooms. Now we're just going to set up a way to connect to our game scene. So I'm going to go to Canvases, up in the hierarchy, Current Room Canvas. I'm going to enable it, and then drop it down until I get to the Player Listings menu. And right inside here, I'm going to create a new object. I'm going to call it, we'll just call it Start Game. And I'm going to just put it above the scroll view because that's where I intend to have it. I'm going to add a raw image. Zoom in a little bit here. I'm just going to set this image roughly to the size of my scroll view. And then I'm going to add a text component where I will, like before, just kind of expand it out. Just going to keep it very simple, doesn't need to be fancy for this example. I'm going to make the text, fairly big. Center it out. I'm going to call it Start Game. Then I'm going to choose my Start Game object again in the hierarchy. I'm going to add component and then choose button. You can also shortcut all this by just right-clicking the object you want to place a child under, and then go to UI, and then there's an option for button. I just wanted it filled out the way I preferred, so I just made it manually real quick. So now we need to have an action whenever we click the button. So I'm going to hit the plus sign, drag Player Listings menu into the on click, and then I'm going to open up Player Listings menu. And I'm going to go down to the very bottom. I'm going to do public void on click Start Game. And very simply, all I'm going to do is Photon Network dot load scene or load level, and I'm going to do 1 for the build index of 1. Then I'm going to head back to Unity. Going to choose my Start Game button, and then under the on click action, I'm going to go to Player Listings menu, on click Start Game. Now, one important thing we have to do is we have to make sure automatically sync scene is set to true. So I'm going to open up Test Connect, and under Start, I'm going to do Photon Network dot automatically sync scene equals true. And this is one method and probably the easiest method of going about loading scenes between players. I'll talk about how to manually do it afterwards if, for example, you want everyone to organize before going into the next scene. There is also one oversight I think we should probably correct. Going over to the Player Listings menu, where we were just at for the on-click Start Game, up above where we get the current room players, we should probably make sure we're connected to Photon before calling this. Otherwise, it may return null, which will cause an error in your game. So we're going to do if Photon Network dot is connected, return, and I'm going to just go ahead and change that to not. So if Photon is not connected, return. I'm going to do if Photon Network dot current room equals null, return. And let's do or photon network dot current room dot players equals null. That way it'll check both of them. If either of them are null, then it will go ahead and exit the method and not run this code. Okay, so with those changes made, let's go ahead and go back to Unity. So everything should be good. We do want to hide the current room canvas though, because that will not be showing up when we first start the game. So I'm going to clear everything out and then hit play. And once I'm connected, I'm going to create a random room. And then I'm going to hit start game. Just as easy as that, you can see it loaded in the next scene. So let's make sure it works with other clients as well. So I'm going to hit stop. And I'm going to make a build and open up the executable and do the same thing. So I have the executable open as well the Unity player. I have created a room in the Unity player, and you can see that room in the executable. Now, because this player or the Unity player created the room, it becomes the master client. We can hand off master client later, and I will talk about that at some point. But for now, keep in mind, whoever makes the room is by default the master client. So on the executable over here in the little window, I'm going to join the room. And then on the master client, I will hit start game. Actually, let me try to move this out of the way a little bit, just so you can see both of these windows. I'm going to go ahead and hit start game on the master client. And you can see that it loaded it up for both the executable, which is just a regular client, and the master client as well. So what would happen is if you try to load the level on a client that wasn't the master client, is that it simply would only load for that one client and no one else would sync up. So with that said, we have to add a check. To do so, I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. And I'm going to go down under player listing menu to on-click start game. And I'm just going to make sure that only the master client can call this. So I'm going to do if photon network.is master client photon network.load level 1. So now normal clients cannot call this. And you'll be seeing me using this a lot as we go, because it's a pretty important feature that you'll probably be making use of quite regularly. So at this point, that's all you have to do for synchronized scene loading. Reasons you may want to not automatically synchronize scenes is perhaps you want to have a scene where players can choose a layout or loadout for their character, maybe like colors or change their nickname or whatever it might be before actually jumping into the game. It's not as easy as you would like, where you could load in one scene where you picked your player preferences or whatever it may be, and then go to the other scene. And the reason for this is because as soon as you join the room and you start a scene that has photon views and packets going in and out, you're going to get those packets whether you're in the same scene or not. There is a way to queue those packets so they basically don't show up, but they will show up eventually after you join the scene and still throw errors. So I have another executable open here that already is in another scene, the game scene, and if I were to change automatically sync scene to say false and then go back to Unity and hit play, I'm going to still see the room because I haven't closed it off. I'll talk about that later. And when I click it, you see I'm getting errors about receiving serialization for view ID 1, but it doesn't exist. That's because it's in a different scene. And when you have more going on in your game, when this is happening a lot, like if you have packets sending regularly, you know, every second you're going to have mini packets, most likely, you're going to get a ton of warning spam and things could potentially break. What we're going to do as an alternative is I'm going to show you how to use custom properties next so that you can preset values before joining a room. And these values might be a character skin or color or user tag or whatever you really want. It could be a number of things. And then in the video after that, I will show you how to join a scene after everyone readies up using RPCs. Let's go back to our test connect script, and I'm going to set automatically sync scene back to true. Your script probably looks a bit different. This video is actually from the future. I went back and made changes to one of my videos. So if your code doesn't line up exactly as you see here, don't worry about it. And then let's go over to the player listings menu. Let's go down to where we handle the start of the game. So on click start game. And keep in mind, if yours varies, don't worry about it. It should be fairly close, but if something's different, don't worry about it. So I'm going to add brackets under the on click start game. And before I load the level, I'm also going to do photon network.current room, which is the room you're currently in, dot is open, and I'm going to set that to false. And I'm going to do photon network.current room dot is visible also equals false. The is open is preventing other players from joining the room, and is visible makes it so it's no longer listed inside the room's list. This isn't necessarily needed for your game either. Perhaps you want users to be able to join in no matter what the current scene is. But for when in the future, I will be talking about the ready up feature and starting the game when everyone is ready up. I also want to lock other people out of the room once it's started, once the game has launched anyway.